Hi, folks. My name is Stephanie, and I'm proud to work with Climbing the Seven Summits. We're joined by Mike and Nani today. Guys, give us a wave. Here's the agenda today, so you know what we're covering. We're going to go through some fast facts just to get to know Aconcagua. We really want everyone to start on the same playing field, and sometimes the terminology, some of these things can get a little confusing. So we'll go through that. We'll talk about how this can fit into your climbing progression, whether or not you're doing the 7 summits. Talk about, of course, the weather, the seasons down there, permits, and even early bird pricing. Again, to level that playing field, we want to make sure we go over terms to know. There are some specialized terms that we really only use. And since it's an interesting route, we'll talk about that. It also makes for interesting terms. And then, of course, Mike's going to really demystify the route that we climb and go through actually what it's going to look like on a day-by-day basis. We'll talk about porters and mules, budgeting and time off, all the different options that we offer for Aconcagua here at Climbing the 7 Summits. And then, of course, wrap it up with our philosophy, not only as an expedition company, but for Aconcagua, and then some final thoughts. So tons of information there. Hopefully this covers a really nice roundabout of things how to get you prepared. We're going to jump into it now. Mike, we're going to have you kick off our introductions. When we were chatting earlier, you told me a story about how Aconcagua was your first international climb after college. And so I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about that experience and why you fell in love with this mountain and why you've continued to return to it over and over again.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. I'm Mike Hamill. I'm one of the owners of Climbing the 7 Summits. I've spent a lot of time on Aconcagua, not as much time as Nani, but I've done 30 expeditions there, spent several years of my life on Aconcagua. I absolutely love it there. I love the climb. But I think those of you that make it to Aconcagua, you'll find that it's a lot more than the climb. You know, some people say, it's not super beautiful, that area, but I think that's like saying southwestern United States is not beautiful. It's a arid desert environment. I find it to be an absolutely beautiful place, but I think it's more about the culture. The Argentinian culture is kind of what I've fallen in love with, and Mendoza as well. The wine and the food there is incredible, and just kind of the energy at the base camps with the Argentinians, just having a good time, enjoying life, and kind of doing it right. So I absolutely love it there. It was one of my first climbs after becoming a guide right after graduating from college, university. I did a trip around the world, and I made sure to stop by Aconcagua. So it holds a special place in my heart, and I love going back year after year.
Awesome. Mike, thank you for sharing that with us. So you alluded to this, that you have 30 expeditions there, but Nani might even have you beat for expeditions. Not that we're keeping track necessarily. Nani, you are Argentinian. You described Aconcagua as your backyard. You know every rock, you know every turn. You started kind of as a person who was really supporting all these other guys. You started as a cook on the mountain and have worked your way up to be our lead guide on Aconcagua this year, among other climbs as well. So tell us a little bit about what Aconcagua, what Argentina means to you, and kind of how you got there to this lead guide position.
How are you, everyone? First of all, my name is Nani Staringe. I would like to thank everyone to share this place, this webinar with us. I have worked in that mountain 21 seasons. I started when I was 18 years old. I am from Mendoza, Argentina. Mendoza, let's say that Mendoza, it's Aconcagua lands, okay, it's that province. And I started to work as a cook in the kitchen, then in the maintenance of the camp. Then I became a porter. I worked in both valleys, Orcones Valley and Vacas Valley. Then I became porter manager. Then after to do the mountain guide school there in Mendoza, I became an assistant guide. Then I did another certification, national certification with different items there in Mendoza. We call it high altitude mountaineering, but anyways, includes rock climbing, ice climbing, skiing, and high altitude mountaineering. And yeah, because like you are telling us, is like because I worked as a porter many years, it's like literally I know every single rock up there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. So Nani is going to also spearhead our conversation about porters, the value of them, and things like that. He has a wealth of knowledge, as he just alluded to, about the mountain as its entirety, from the guiding to the porters to even the rocks, the landscapes, things like that. So if you have questions for him, he's going to be an awesome resource. And then Nani, correct me if I'm wrong, though, you guide more than just on Aconcagua. You are Argentinian. This is one of your favorite places, but you go beyond there, correct?
Yes, yes. And also after to do that school there in Mendoza, I began a IFMGA guide with full certification here in Argentina. So that means that I have the certification to work around the world. So luckily I've been, for example, in Denali, then in South America, Peru, Bolivia. Also last spring, I summited Everest with CTSS. So I feel like very blessed because of that, and then around the world. I've been in the Alps a couple times, keep climbing and keep traveling and keep guiding.
Awesome. Well, Mike, I'm sure you would agree that from CTSS's side, we're very thankful to have you and guides just, kind of like you on our team and supporting all of our climbers, because you really make things happen. So thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to Mike. He's going to give us a little rundown of some fast facts for Aconcagua. Again, we really want to get everyone on the same playing field. So Mike, these are a couple highlights, things we're going to be talking about today. Go ahead and point out some of your key highlights for the folks that are here today.
Absolutely. I think some of the key points: Aconcagua, 22,841 feet, almost 7,000 meters, tallest point outside of the Himalayas. It's a massive peak, and it really is a high altitude expedition. So even though it's relatively non-technical climbing, it shouldn't be underestimated. It's a long expedition dealing with extreme altitude, so people need to be prepared for that. And for those reasons, it's a great training peak for the Himalayas. So that's what we use it for a lot. I mean, it's obviously a great expedition standalone from others, but a lot of people use it to train for the Himalayas, and it's great for that. 15 to 21 day trip, kind of depending on if you're doing our speed ascent trip or the full team expedition. We run the 360 expedition, it's called. It kind of goes up a less traveled side of the mountain through Plaza Argentina, and then goes up to high camp, summits the peak, and then drops down the normal route. We find it to be more beautiful. It's slightly less busy and just more varied terrain. We found it to be a better experience overall. So we call that the 360 traverse, if you hear us using that term. A couple other things. Yeah, highest mountain in South America, the Western Hemisphere, in the Andes Mountains, as Nani mentioned, just outside of Mendoza, Argentina. If you're not familiar with Mendoza, it's a beautiful town, great spot. I spent a lot of time there, incredible wine region. So I certainly recommend booking a few extra days, either on the beginning or probably better on the end of your trip, to do some wine touring around the region. Beautiful spot, very kind of European, everyone just relaxing, having a good time, drinking good wine, eating good food. Great place to be. It's kind of like that arid desert environment, as I mentioned, kind of like the southwestern United States. Can be very hot during the day down low, can be extremely cold at night down low, but certainly up high as well. You kind of get those extremes with that environment, but it's quite dry. For that reason, the weather is pretty good. It's not like Denali where you get these 6-foot snowstorms rolling through. You might get a storm or two a season and get some snow accumulation, but for the most part, it's pretty good weather there, although it does get quite a bit of wind. As I mentioned before, it's not a super technical climb, but not to be underestimated. You usually do need crampons and ice axe for summit day. If you can see just behind Stephanie's head there, that's just above high camp. You can see how much snow we have there. We're already in crampons, and that team was in crampons most of the way to the summit. So definitely be prepared for snow and a bit of ice. Porter support is available. I started guiding there. Nani started there, 20, 25 years ago. Porters weren't as common, but they are these days. And I think that's a great thing. It allows our clientele to have a better experience and, focus more on their climbing and less on carrying massive loads. So that's something new that we really support.
Thank you for that. Nani, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the value of porters as well. We alluded to the fact that you've been working with porters for a long time, but can you just add on to what Mike was sharing there, a little bit of your thoughts coming really from the homeland? How can porters really assist climbers when they're out on Aconcagua?
From my point of view and from my experience, I think that it's very, very important if you have the possibility, of course, to hire a porter. It's very helpful. You are not cheating. It's a very smart decision because it's a very high mountain. It's a long mountain. It's a tough mountain also. I saw many times that the people start to get more and more tired after a couple of days and more weak. And that things, it's like go straight to the summit day. It's like the people who didn't use porters get a little bit more tired than the people who used porters during the whole expedition. So the main thing is for summit day. So we are trying to keep energy for the most important day of the expeditions.
Yeah, that's awesome. And on that note, the success rate on Aconcagua, if you look as an overarching mountain, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty low. It's somewhere around like 30%, not for CTSS, but as like a mountain as a whole. That's really low. Nani's alluding to talking about how people get quite tired, quite exhausted. Porters can really help with that. What does our success rate look? How does it compare to that kind of mountain average at 30%? And why is that so low on this mountain that's not necessarily technical?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of people underestimate Aconcagua. They think because it's non-technical, it's going to be an easy walk up peak, and it's not. It's a massive endeavor, undertaking. And so a lot of people, you can come climb Aconcagua on your own. A lot of people show up. They think it's going to be easy, and, they don't make it much above base camp. And, I think part of that as well is, some of the local companies aren't quite as invested in success, like, at Climbing the Seven Summits, and I'll talk more about this later. We build a relationship with our clientele. We want people to have a great time and be successful on Aconcagua and then go on to climb other peaks with us. Whereas a lot of the local companies, they only guide on Aconcagua and it's kind of one and done. So we really invest in that success to try and make it a good overall experience. But yeah, we have nearly every expedition from Climbing the Seven Summit, well over 90%. And most of our climbers do summit because of the approach we take, kind of a slow acclimatization, longer schedule, good food, best guides, all of that. Yeah, a little bit about our philosophy.
Perfect. Well, Mike, that's a really great lead into our next slide. This is all about really, we are an expedition company. We really do want to invest in your entire journey, whether you're going for the 7 summits, you have just a dream of maybe just summiting Denali, maybe just getting yourself to Aconcagua. Maybe that is it, which is amazing and quite a feat to do just in its own. So we want to talk to Mike a little bit about how this fits into your climbing career. If you're doing the 7 summits, again, that's great, but you don't have to be. I'm going to have him review the skills that we really highlight that you need to have and you need to come with, and then expeditions to consider before and after. So Mike, I'm going to have you talk through this because this really does still also roll into our philosophy and what we pin as really great prep and what you're going to move to next. So I'll turn this back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned before, Aconcagua is an amazing climb, an amazing experience. It's not that you need to be climbing Aconcagua as a stepping stone to the Himalayas. It's an awesome experience in and of itself. But, a lot of people, it's in the name of our company, Climbing the 7 Summits. A lot of our clientele are climbing the 7 summits. So we talk about a progression here. And we find, as I mentioned earlier, Aconcagua is a great training ground for seeing how your body does at that extreme altitude before stepping up to the Himalayas. So it's not going to be the first peak in your progression, but it's a great way to train for Manaslu, Cho-Oyu, Everest, some of the other 6,000 and 7,000 meter peaks in the Himalayas. It's also a great way to train for Denali. It's a long expedition. You're sleeping in a tent, you're carrying heavy loads. So if you're looking to step up to Denali, Aconcagua is kind of a good stepping stone for that. And also seeing how you do at altitude. But you don't want it to be the first step in your progression. We usually say Ecuador volcanoes, maybe a training seminar on Mount Baker, Mount Rainier, something like that, climbing Mont Blanc. You want some steps in the progression before jumping up to Aconcagua. So getting used to spending several days sleeping in a tent, being outside, also getting used to some of those skills like cramponing, self-arrest. They're very important to have in your skill set before stepping up to Aconcagua, especially on summit day. It's a very full peak, so making sure your training and fitness are there. And again, you can use porters and that reduces the load that you have to carry. But if you're trying to do it without porters, then pack weights are pretty heavy. So making sure that you're training with a pack and you can carry a heavy pack day after day is super important.
Yeah. Quick question for Nani. This one just came in. If somebody has hired a porter for the ascent, how much pack weight can they be expecting to carry? Like the climber, not the porter necessarily, but how much pack weight does the climber expect to carry if they are using a porter? Does that make sense?
In the expedition, we split the gear with your personal gear, all your stuff, plus some common gear, okay? Anyways, CTSS right now, it's including a little bit of gear, of common gear for everybody. So they give that luggage, that things, that supplies for the porters. But anyways, we have a lot of things, a lot of supplies to carry up on the mountains. So when we are talking about common gear, we are talking about tents, fuel, stoves, and food. Okay, so we have to think about your personal gear plus that. Hiring a porter, anyways, you're gonna carry some weight, some kgs in your backpack, yes or yes. So we are talking about 12, 15 kgs, you know, depending how heavy is your backpack, how heavy is your gear and everything. But anyways, the day pack, always you have to carry your water, some snacks and like that. So we are talking about exactly 26 pounds, yeah. Hiring a porter.
Perfect. So folks, that's still decently, it's a light pack for backpacking, 26, 30 pounds for this kind of expedition that you're doing. It's not super heavy like what you feel on Denali and things like that. And that's only if you're hiring a porter. So I think that answers hopefully somebody's question specifically about how much should I expect to carry if I am hiring a porter. Mike, I have one more question for you, and I think this is a really important question that I want to spend some time on. We have expeditions to consider before and after, and I don't see Kilimanjaro anywhere on that. I know folks, as in other operators, really like to say, oh, you've done like Mount Baker or Rainier, you've done Kilimanjaro, boom, Aconcagua is next. They build Aconcagua as next in line after Kilimanjaro. And we had a number of folks come in and say in our kind of pre-survey, say, I've done Kilimanjaro. Is this the right next step for me? I'd love to hear your thoughts on Kilimanjaro as a progression getting ready for Aconcagua.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Certainly, if you're really strong and confident, that might be reasonable. But we want to see everyone be successful. So having a few more intermediate climbs there, like the Ecuador volcanoes or Lobuche East in the Himalayas, I think are very smart to build that confidence, build that skill, and make sure you're successful on Aconcagua. So you can go there once, do it right, summit, and not have to go back again. I don't want to see people use it as a training peak. Use other climbs as a training peak, get some other experience, and then go be successful on Aconcaguas. It kind of would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So folks, your success is really important to us. We don't want you to have to come back over and over. We'd rather you go once and hit it with a guide like Nani rather than have to return over and over. So really talking to our team to honestly assess where you are. If you can do it, if this feels like the right move, Mike said people have done it, but for a lot of people, that intermediate climb is just the perfect step. So for really getting that high altitude, Ecuador, getting out to Nepal, doing Lobuche, going to our beautiful Everest base camp are really going to help you get ready for that. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to have Mike go ahead and share our upcoming climbing dates for this year and next year. And then Nani's going to talk a little bit more about the weather. And I know somebody was asking about 2025, 2026 dates. So this date is not available on our website yet, but it is available here. So I just sent that to you. But Mike, I'll let you jump in.
We recently did a Vincent webinar, and it's kind of a similar climbing season. I think the biggest factor for people when they climb Aconcagua is can you get away for the holidays? Do you need to use that holiday vacation time? Or do you want to be with your family and friends for the holidays and then use another period of time? So we offer kind of 2 trips, holiday trip, December 22nd through January 10th for the people that need to use that holiday time, and then trips in February. They're both a great time to climb. They're kind of high season on Aconcagua. Before mid-December, we find that winds can be a bit higher. There's a lot more snow then. So I think mid-December through February is a great time to climb. You're not going to go wrong. We have similar success rates for both those time periods. Just depends on if you can get away for the holidays or not.
Perfect. Awesome. And Mike, I'd love to hear a little bit on why we prefer the 360 route, the false Polish traverse. I know you alluded that that's our preferred route, wider, but I'd love to hear a little bit of pros and cons, or just pros if it's only pros.
Yeah, not to talk badly about the normal route, but it obviously has more people on it, and it's just actually this picture you see right here is on the normal route. It's just kind of this long, steady scree slope, and there's very little variance. It's kind of loose scree the whole way up, which is great for coming down. But if you spend 2 weeks on that ascending, it gets really boring and monotonous, and the spots for camps are not that great. There's not as much access to water. It's less varied. So we find it to be much more beautiful on the other side of the mountain. And the normal route is a nice, quick way to get down the mountain and get out of the park. But for an ascent, it's just not as pleasant. It's not as aesthetic. So for that reason, we generally avoid it unless someone is really time crunched. Then you can save a couple days, and we sometimes run private trips there. But for the most part, we find it's a better experience doing the 360 route.
Awesome. And Nani, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the 360 route as well. I know you've done it all. You've been there many, many times, but curious some of your favorite things and maybe why you prefer the 360.
Honestly, after 21 seasons, I worked in both valleys a lot, and I prefer 360 because it's not too crowded, because it's a little bit more wild. Let's say until base camp, it's a little bit more wild. Also, you share with the locals, with us, plus the muleters. So that means that in the 2 intermediate camping sites to get base camp, we normally like to cook barbecue. We call it asado with the arrieros, that they are the muleters. They are kind of, let's say, cowboys from here, we call it gauchos. So you can see a little bit more like the local culture. Then up on the mountain, the views are amazing. Speaking about terrain, it's quite more gradual, the trails to get the different high camps after base camp. Then another good one, a very good one as a guide and as the people who work there, it's like normally in Camp 1 and also in Camp 2, you can get water. It's on a small river running there that you can get water. Instant, the other side that you have to melt snow to get water. Even in Camp 1 right now, because the global warming and the situation that we have around the world, it's no way to get snow. So that means that we are carrying from base camp to Camp 1, we are carrying water. Honestly, the landscapes in this site are beautiful, but also combining the 360, I like because you can see all the camps. That means that you're gonna go all around the mountains. Anyway, we're gonna show the map. We're gonna see the map together, and you will see by your own. But I like because you can go all around the mountains and you can check by your own the whole mountain, the whole thing. So that's why I prefer 360.
Beautiful. Awesome. That makes absolute sense. Lots of culture, water access, just sounds like a more enjoyable terrain and experience when you take that 360 route. Of course, the weather is something to be considered. Mike said, it's sunny, it's dry, it's windy, it can be hot, it can be cold. It can change from day to night, just like some of you have experienced probably before on mountains or in the desert. So let's talk about the infrastructure that CTSS uses on the mountain. So Nani, will you tell us a little bit about how our various camps look and how that can help manage and mitigate the weather? Of course, we will wear layers and we'll talk about gear and how to keep yourself warm. But when you're actually trekking, when you're on this expedition, what is the infrastructure? What do these different camps look like to help mitigate?
Okay, that is a very good question. It's a common question. Well, first of all, I like to work with CTSS because they are very serious, and right now they are working with a local company that they are providing very, very, very good services up on the mountain and during the valley and logistic things, and from the city to the city. So from the city all the way up and all the way down, we're gonna have a very good support, very serious local company. That is something not too easy to find. That is the first thing. Then, speaking about infrastructure, because they are a very good company, during the hike to get base camp, we have the best infrastructure comparing with the other companies. We have Wi-Fi, we have big domes that before base camp we're gonna share maybe with the people from that company that normally is not too much people, but very good food, and very good services. Toilets, we have shower. We are not because we are working with CTSS, but this company is the only company that have showers in one of the intermediate camping sites and also Wi-Fi. Maybe this year some other company gonna do it again or also, but I don't know. Then in base camp we have chefs, we have people working there that they give us very, very good food. Somebody was asking if we're gonna have wine. Yes, we're gonna have wine. We say that in some places the people say that this sentence that is born to be wild, we say born to be wine. So we're gonna have good wine there. And then up on the mountain, that this is very, very, very important. In Camp 1, Camp 2, and Camp 3, we have domes. One dome to cook for the guys and one another dome for the people to stay there, the dining room. So you can stay there, it's for you. And let's say that we have bad weather up on the mountain. We can stay in these domes, we can share with other people or with us, but it's just for this company. That means that if we need to wait because we have bad weather or whatever happened, we have a good infrastructure to be comfy there, and we don't need to be the whole time in our personal tent that sometimes it's very uncomfortable because it's tight and like that. So we have very, very good services. Even last year in Camp 3, we have very, very good Wi-Fi.
Awesome. Yeah. So there was just a question. A lot of those services are available more at base camp. As you get up, you might not get the showers quite as you get to the higher camps, quite as many amenities. But our local operators and our team here at CTSS have been working really, really hard to make everything more and more comfortable as you continue up the mountain. This is why exactly we work with folks like Nani, because he is one of the many local people who knows exactly how to put this all together and make it really, really comfortable for you guys, or as comfortable as possible given that. So Nani, thank you for giving us a quick overview of really what those camps look like and what to expect. And really that CTSS difference, it leans into our marginal gains philosophy, which we'll close out with at the whole end of this presentation. But it really leans into you guys getting the support to feel strong, feel good, rest easy. Mike, I am going to have you chat a little bit about permits and early bird pricing for those permits. This isn't our true arena, and Mike will tell you why this isn't our true arena. So Mike, I'll leave this to you.
Obviously, you have to have a climbing permit to climb Aconcagua. It's a third-party thing, the money all goes to the provincial park, but they do offer early bird pricing. So we like to extend that to our clientele. A lot of people for this coming season have already got in on that, which is great. Just saves you some money. But, the permit fees can vary depending on high season, low season, when you're climbing, and from year to year. We never know exactly what the exchange rate's going to be or what they're going to be charging for permit pricing. Getting in on that early bird pricing is great because you know exactly what you're paying and you can save some money. But you do need to buy a climbing permit for Aconcagua. And, as I mentioned, that's something totally separate from us. That's something that's paid directly to the provincial park government. So when we get to town, we'll facilitate that whole process. Take you over to the park service on the first day that we're doing gear checks and having team briefings and kind of facilitate that process for you.
And Mike, can you just clarify really quickly, that permit cost is not included in our expedition fees because it has to go directly to the provincial park.
That's correct. Yeah, that's something outside of our climbing fees. Yeah.
Yep. If we could send it to them for you and make that smooth, we would. But it has to go direct from you guys, the climbers, to them. And so that is just the way it's set up there. And then Mike, I also think this year we got a climbing permit, or we helped a client that is climbing with somebody that's 17 and under. Does that take a little extra time if you're climbing with a youth minor? Of course, maybe it's your son or daughter or something like that. Does that take a little extra time to get through that process in Argentina?
Yeah, there are a few more hoops to jump through. So if you are planning on climbing with your child, or then you need to start working on this process further in advance of the trip. So just keep that in mind. If it's a family trip you're taking, then we need more lead time for that.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, folks, we're going to jump into the route here soon. Before we do that, I do have one slide here that Nani's going to review. His Spanish is supreme, and there are a lot of fun Spanish-esque words in here. You've already heard us flying around with like Plaza Argentina. Somebody's even like, wait, if we're taking 360, are there two different base camps? Ding, ding, you've got it. There's two different valleys. There's words like porter loads and different duffels that you'll have. So Nani, go right ahead.
Okay, perfect. We call it Plaza Argentina. It's the base camp during the ascent, or on our route, it's 360 route, okay? Then we have Plaza de Mulas. That's gonna be our base camp going down. After our summit day, we're gonna get the other base camp, that is Plaza de Mulas. Then in the map, we're gonna see it together and you will understand. Then we have Vacas Valley. Vacas Valley is the valley that we're gonna go up on mountains. Orcones is the one that we're gonna use to go down. Then we have a double carry. It's support acclimatization, carry days, move days. And then one of the porter load, this is important to know that the carry load or the load that we're gonna give to the porter, it's 40 pounds, 20 kg. If you have a little bit more weight, it's not a problem, but always you're gonna pay for that extra weight, okay? We can talk about that later. Then, trekking duffels. Normally we split the gear by two duffels, okay? One that we're gonna be using day by day during the trekking until base camp, and the other one that we're gonna send straight to base camp, waiting for us for the upper part of the mountain, okay? From base camp to the high camps. Then we have, there is the base camp duffel that normally we send straight to the base camp. And one word that we forgot to put, it's vino. It's wine.
Thank you.
You
Somebody
go.
did ask if the mountain meals come with vina.
Yeah, vino.
I love that. So we have Bacas Valley, that's the ascent valley. Horcones Valley, that's your descent valley. Plaza Argentina, your first base camp. Plaza de Mulas, your second base camp. If you are hiring a porter, they support just one day of your 2 days that you're hiking up to various camps. So you have a carry day where you carry stuff, and a move day where you still carry stuff, but you also might have a porter if you've got that. All of these words are going to be present on the itinerary and kind of the route overview that Mike is going to go through. So just really important to hopefully see these, know these, but know that we will share them again with you. If you sign up, if you want to look on our website, all this is available.
This is a great picture of the Polish glacier. You can see the glacier leading to the summit of Aconcagua. That's the Polish glacier. We're going to talk a bit more about that later in terms of training for Everest and whatnot. So that's a good visual for people to see what we're talking about.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. And speaking of good visuals, we have 2 maps coming up. I think Nani's going to give us the overview of what we're looking at here. We have this real zoomed in of just like a quarter of the mountain. Of course, it's 360, so that means all the way around it. So we're really zoomed in on just like one little aspect corner of the mountain here. And then we're going to zoom back out after that. So Nani, can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here on these maps? And then Mike's going to go over the route. Yeah.
We are watching, like you was telling, Steph, we are watching part of the mountain, let's say the high camps of the mountain. Camp 1, it's in this altitude from here, that, it's a good place, it's a very protected place. Then Camp 2, for me, is maybe the most beautiful place on the mountain, on this valley, in Vacas Valley. And something important to know, it's like both routes, they have different ways until Camp 3. So that means that summit day is the same for everybody. For the people who is coming through normal route, okay, or Cones Valley, and for the people who is coming up through Vacas Valley or 360 route. we bound these two routes in Camp 3 that we call it Berlin or Cholera. Let's say there, if you see a map, something important to know, if you see a map, if you Google later or whatever, you're going to see that the camps in general have names, like, for example, Camp Canada or Camp Nido de Cóndores. But anyways, for us, it's much easier to share with you like Camp 1, Camp 2, and Camp 3 for both sides. Then from Camp 3, we have the summit day that is the same for everybody. Then you can see that is the one of the last points that we call it Independencia. It was on a small hut. Right now it's not working, it's destroyed. But it's a point that is 6,200 meters, something like that. Then we have the Windy Gate, that is a very critical place because we are going up on the mountain with weather that is maybe not the best. It's a very windy place. So that is a place that normally we take decisions there and we see the conditions in the highest part of the mountain. Then we have the Canaleta, that it's a very common question that the people think that in that section, in the Canaleta, you have to climb or you have to use your hands to go up. No, we don't need to use the hands to go up on the mountain. The Canaleta, let's say that is many switchbacks, between 30 and 35 degrees of inclination. Then we have the other traverse, the traverse that we call it Filo de Guanaco to get the summit. That is the thing that we are watching. And then from Camp 3, let's say that we did Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, summit, come back to sleep in Camp 3, that here it's Berlin. We are watching the thing that the name is Berlin. In some places you can see like German camp, but it's Camp 3, okay? From Camp 3, we're going to spend the night after summit day, and we're going to go all the way down until Plaza de Mulas. And we're going to pass through Camp 2 and Camp 1 from the other side. I don't know if it's more or less clear.
Yeah. Let's flip to this one, Nani, because I think that this also really gives a nice highlight. The Vacas Valley coming up where it says Pampa de Lenas. See how everyone takes the same summit route up there by the mountain. And then how you're coming back down the Horocones Valley, passing what would be Camp 1 and Camp 2 in the normal route on the way down. Does that help bring that together for you?
Yeah, sure. It's like here it's more clear that you have two entrances in Aconcagua mountain, and you're gonna go all around the mountain, and you can see in this map perfectly that this line that is going alone to the summit is the same day for everybody. So that means that we're gonna meet with everybody in Camp 3. There you have the two intermediate camping sites. From Vacas Valley, okay, is the line that is going to the right, okay? So you have Pampa de Leñas, Casa de Piedras, then Base Camp, Plaza Argentina, Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, Summit Day, and then keep going to the left to get the other base camp. And then you keep going, following the line until Confluencia, that is the intermediate camping site from the other side.
Awesome. So folks, again, Nani's doing a fantastic job breaking the route down for you. We're going to keep breaking it down. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and we're actually going to put up on screen like day 1, day 2, day 3. We are going to show you where we rest, how we acclimatize. And Mike, I know, is going to talk a lot about our slower acclimatization schedule and also probably how that lends itself to success as well. So Mike, I am going to have you jump in now and kind of run with what Nani just started, giving us a beautiful visual overview. So folks, Mike's jumping in, starting us really at Mendoza, getting us all the way up to the summit now.
Yeah, I like the way you've broken this up, Stephanie, into kind of the 3 sections. As you can see here, meet in Mendoza. We spend a full day doing gear checks, have a team meeting, go out for dinner, get to know your teammates. Great way to start the trip. And then we head up to Penitentes or near there, which is kind of right at the start of that valley we travel in, the Vacas Valley. So that's about a 3-hour drive from Mendoza, meet in Mendoza, drive up to around Penitentes. And then we start the trek in the next morning. The trek into base camp, Plaza Argentina, is 3 days, and that's all mule assisted. So you're carrying your day pack, but nothing more. The mules are the ones carrying the big heavy duffel bags. That's supported the whole way in. They're with us. They drop off the duffel bags when you get to each camp, and you can get into those for your sleeping gear, your warm gear, whatever it is you need. So 3 days into base camp, that last day into Plaza Argentina is quite a long day. You get into base camp, and then immediately we have a rest acclimatization day there. That's quite a jump up from Casa de Piedra, that last camp, to base camp. So after that, the whole team is pretty tired. Everyone needs a rest, and it's a big jump in altitude, so it's good to acclimatize that next day. And now we're on the climb. So typically we'll do, and I don't know if this is the most appropriate place for me to talk about the double carries, probably is, but you can see we'll carry to Camp 1 on day 8, drop back down to base camp, have another rest day before moving up to Camp 1. And that's kind of what we mean by those double carries. We break the move to each camp down into 2 separate days, a gear carry and a acclimatization day. Climb high, sleep low, drop back down to base camp, and then we move up the following day. It allows us to keep that slow acclimatization progression, and it also lets us divide the gear. If you're not using a porter, then your pack is going to be pretty heavy, so it allows you to divide your gear up into those 2 separate gear carries. So, this is a technique that's used all over the world, from Denali to the Himalayas to, Aconcagua. We use it on Vincent in Antarctica. So very common. It's good for everyone to know that term, and it's super helpful. It's a great way to allow your body to acclimatize. So double carry up to Camp 1. On Nani's suggestion from last year, we added an extra rest day after that carry to Camp 1 before moving to Camp 1. I think that's a great idea. It allows our teams to be good and rested before fully moving up onto the mountain. We found that some people were a little bit wiped out after that carry to Camp 1 and benefited from an extra rest day. So we added that in. Again, it's our goal to maximize success, experience. So adding that extra day helps us give people a better experience and allow them to be more successful. So another rest day there, move up to Camp 1, carry to Camp 2 the following day, move to Camp 2. That's the camp that Nani was talking about. It's a very beautiful camp. It's got a little stream running through the camp. Looking off to the north, you can see Ameghino and Lamano and some of those beautiful peaks headed up the range. That's always been my favorite camp as well. Usually take a rest day at Camp 2 before moving up to high camp or Camp 3, putting ourselves in position for the summit. We don't take a rest day at Camp 3 unless weather dictates, because at that point you're at 19,500 feet, nearly 6,000 meters. So your body doesn't rest that well there. We want to get up there as quick as we can, tag the summit, and then get down, because your body is just not really able to rest and recover at those altitudes, unless, of course, you need to due to weather. So move into Camp 3, summit day. The next day, hopefully come back down, as Nani said, spend another night at Camp 3, and then we drop down the other side of the mountain to the Horcones Valley, Plaza de Mules. So this is kind of the third segment of the climb. We do have several contingency days in there if we have weather at high camp, or we just need to acclimatize a little bit more before going to the summit. You can see those contingency days at the end. So after the summit bid, as I mentioned, we'll spend another night at Camp 3, drop down to Plaza de Mules, have a little bit of a celebration there. Usually they make pizzas for us. You can buy a beer, maybe some wine there. And then it's just a long trek out the next day, 18 miles, about 30 kilometers. It's kind of a long day, but we've got all day, and that's all we need to do. So we just put our heads down and motor on out, get back to Penitentes, or Puente del Inca, I think is generally what we're using these days. And then from there, we typically drive back to Mendoza that night, and then have a full day to kind of relax and celebrate in Mendoza.
Awesome. Mike, I have a couple of questions for you. That Camp 3 to Plaza de Mulas, that is, I know it's a long hike. It's like 18 miles, am I correct? 30 kilometers?
No, the trek out from Plaza de Mules to Puente del Inca is the long day. The drop down from Camp 3 to Plaza de Mules is actually pretty short. Okay. It may only take 3 hours. It might be 2 miles or something like that. So that's a pretty quick day dropping down that day.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. How much from Plaza de Mules down in that 18-mile day? How many thousands of feet are you actually descending? There was a question specifically about the descent and how much elevation you're losing on day number 17.
You probably lose between 4,000 and 5,000 feet, a little over 1,000 meters, but it's all very gradual. It's these big, wide open glacial river valleys. So it doesn't even feel like you're necessarily losing altitude. It's so gradual. You pretty much just put your head down and just keep walking. We usually stop in Confluencia for a nice meal there to fill up the water bottles before the last little push out. But you do lose a lot of altitude, but it feels very gradual.
That makes sense. Yeah. 2 questions I want to ask folks coming from sea level and then folks that are a little bit older is following this standard like 2021 day plan. Do you see any lack of success or any change of success, or is there anything different they should do? Again, folks are a little bit older, folks that are coming from sea level to help be ready for this schedule and getting up to the top of this summit. So people are kind of wondering, those special demographics a little bit, if they should do anything different or if this schedule can accommodate them as well.
No, absolutely. This schedule is for everyone. It's overly, I don't want to say slow, but it's longer than it needs to be for that reason. Even if there are people coming from sea level or you acclimatize more slowly, it still has plenty of time to accommodate you in this schedule. So, you can certainly do the climb a lot faster than this, but we want it to be nice and slow and steady for everyone. And that'll just make sure everyone is rested and acclimatized as possible for summit day. That'll improve success. So no, this is a schedule that anyone should be able to handle. Again, it's a very slow acclimatization itinerary so that, it just kind of works for everyone.
Awesome. Okay. So hopefully that answers quite a few questions that folks had swirling around about coming from sea level and about age. So Nani, I am going to have you tell us a little bit more about, now that we have a good overview, a little bit more about porters specifically. I have a picture of the mule because they're sometimes more photogenic than the porters. Not saying anything there. But there's no better person than Nani, really, to give us just one more look at the porters. So porters for the climb up, you can see folks that organizing that ahead of time is a really great idea. They can carry up to 40 pounds of weight. They don't necessarily trek with the team though. But Nani, my question for you is, can porters be split between various climbers? Can like one porter carry gear from a couple different clients if they so?
Yes, it's completely possible. So it's a common like for sometimes the people split by 2. That means that each one gives to them 10 kg and 10 kg. Let's say 20 pounds and 20 pounds. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And then Nani, quick question. Can people book on the mountain or only pre-book? How does that work with booking or hiring your porter?
Okay, you have both options, but we highly recommend to hire a porter, before to go to the expedition, in advance to try to pre-book, because sometimes they are very busy and sometimes could be very tough to get a porter when you are up on the mountain. Then, if you didn't do that before, you have the possibility to do it up on the mountain, let's say in the different camps. Even in different camps, when you are up on the mountain, you can tell to your guides and your guide gonna call by radio to ask if it's possible to get a porter, for example, from camp 1 to camp 2. So you can do it up on the mountain. But the contra of that is that you have to carry dollar cash up on the mountain with you. So sometimes if you're gonna get a porter, let's say, I will tell something short, but it's a very common situation that the people don't want to hire a porter. That is okay. I am agree. If you don't want, it's okay. But after the first day, the first carry day, people go to camp 1 and they realize that it was very tiring. So in that point, the people decide to hire a porter. They are in base camp. And sometimes the people don't have the money, the cash. So it's super difficult to get a porter if you don't have the cash. So if you have the possibility, much better to hire in advance, like pre-book a porter.
Perfect. Awesome. Folks, pre-booking your porter, such a good idea. It can be hired on the mountains, but you have to have cash and they have to be available. Remember, even if you're hiring a porter, you are still carrying up to 30 pounds each time you carry and move because it's your personal gear and there is team gear as well. You can split porters. A lot of times people split porters on the way down to help with that carry off the mountain as well. Lots of different options there, but really discussing that ahead of time. If you want a porter, pre-booking that is such a stellar idea. But don't forget, you're still carrying some weight. You still have to train for that weight carrying, right, Nani?
Definitely.
I did have one question. Someone is a particularly small human, a smaller framed woman. Would they essentially be carrying just as much gear and weight? Does that change at all? I know that was the question. And Mike, you might be able to answer this. Do you ever do that, like adjust how much weight folks are carrying based on you got a 6'5" dude and a 5'2" woman? Those are a little different.
Absolutely. So their gear obviously is going to be smaller than mine as a 6'3" male. They're just going to have, less total gear because it's all smaller, right? So their personal gear will be lighter, but the group gear, we want everyone to pitch in and do their share. There are ways we can, certainly as guides, if someone is smaller, we might give them a slightly smaller load or a less bulky load if they have a smaller pack or something like that. There are ways that we can kind of manipulate those things to make it work for everyone, but their personal gear will be a lot lighter. But that might be a good reason to consider porters. You get to a peak like Denali and the group gear is the group gear, and there's no option to hire porters, and you just have to throw it on your back and go. And if you're smaller, then that percentage of weight is going to be bigger. It's going to be higher for someone that's smaller than someone like myself. So it is going to be a bit more challenging to carry. I think that might be a good reason to look at porters as well.
Yeah. And also a good reason, Mike, I'm leading myself into my next side to really hone in on your training and to work your pack weight up. So, Mike, I know you're going to tell us a little bit more about training for this expedition. We always say here at CTSS that the climb and the expedition starts long before you ever get to the mountain, in part because you start training months, 6-8 months in advance for an expedition like Aconcagua. So walk us through a good training regime and getting prepared to make a summit like this. Turn it over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned before, a lot of people underestimate Aconcagua because it's mostly kind of high altitude trekking. It's not very technical, but it's a huge peak. You've got heavy packs, so you need to take this seriously. And a lot of our clients will hire a coach specifically to help them train, or a training plan, and we find that helps. But some people don't need that. They're very diligent, or maybe they have a background in endurance sports. So that's great. I never hired a coach. I just kind of trained on my own for these trips, and that seemed to work well for me. So that's certainly an option. Don't feel like you need to hire a coach, but you need to be diligent about it. And that means, training at least 5 days a week, doing a lot of endurance. Certainly general strength is good for climbing, but if you're going to be climbing, you want to train to climb. And that means going out and doing long days backpacking with a heavy pack on your back. That's going to be the best thing for you. So if you can't hike every day during the week, maybe you're on a bike or you're running or whatever it is, or on a stair stepper, you need to make sure you get out on the weekends for at least one long hiking day every weekend. And in the lead up to the trip, the weeks and months before the trip, you want to be doing long back-to-back days, because that's what you're going to see on the mountain. So you want to be able to mimic that before the trip. So getting out for 2 days, 3 days consecutively with a heavy pack on, 6 to 8 hours a day is very important in the lead up to the climb. And I mentioned kind of this stair stepper, running, cycling, swimming, that's all good cross training, but you want the majority of what you're doing to be sport and muscle specific. So just getting out, putting a pack on, and walking uphill is what you need to do. Yeah, starting small and then working your way up. Don't just dive right in. You're going to injure yourself. You want to start kind of smaller and then work your training progression up so that you're kind of at your max hours just prior to the climb expedition.
That's a great overview, Mike. I have one very kind of specific question. I want to talk a little bit more about endurance. We had somebody ask a question that's like, hey, what pace should I be running a mile at to be ready for Aconcagua? But it kind of struck me because I was like, oh, I wondered if that even mattered if you run a 10 or a 12 or a 7-minute mile. Does that stuff kind of matter? Is that how you should be tracking yourself? Or are we thinking more endurance? Like, hey, I can hike for 7 miles uphill for these many hours straight, this many thousands.
Exactly. It's less about pace and more how long you can do the activity for. So if you could do 7 miles or 7 hours at a time training, that's more important than hitting like a 6-minute mile or 7-minute mile. We purposefully keep a really slow pace on these trips. A lot of people can go faster than that, but we want to keep it slow so that our climbers save their energy for the summit day. And even though you can go faster, that doesn't mean you want to go faster on the mountain. You want to keep your pace slow, save as much energy as you can for later in the trip.
That's awesome.
So we purposely go slow, and in training, you want to be focused on endurance, kind of that long, slow distance, not on interval training, not on power and strength. You want the majority of your training to be endurance training.
Thank you for that. Folks, when you do sign up for an expedition, Lisa Thompson has wrote all of our trip-specific training plans. And so you do get access to that trip-specific training plan once you sign up for one of our expeditions. We really want to make you successful in the mountains. And I was just listening to one of our old little webinars, or little things on YouTube. And one of our guides, Robert, says that like, you can have more fun in the mountains when you're fit and you're trained and you're ready. And that just really hit home. What was, he had a line, but I don't have it right in front of me. He had a very fun line. But I think that'll be a nice webinar, folks. Now we're going to switch gears over to gear. I'm going to let Nani talk a little bit about this. We have a couple of items on here. We plucked out a few of the most important things to talk about. Let's start with triple boots. Do folks really, we get this question a lot. Do folks really need triple boots for Aconcagua? Can they use double boots?
Yes, it's like, from my point of view, my recommendation is to try to go with triple boots, because maybe if you are trying to climb the 7 summits, you're going to have the same boots to use in Denali, Everest, and maybe Vinson, see? But it's possible to climb with double boots. For example, like G2 from La Sportiva, they work very well. Also, you can combine with the heaters that we have there, you know, with that things that we are watching there. Some other common questions, it's about parka, if I need parka, climbing parka or not. And yes, we need. For summit day, believe me, guys, we're going to have a very, very cold day, normally during the morning, during the night, because we start like early in the morning. It's very cold. How much cold? For example, I summited Aconcagua with minus 41 Celsius. So could be very cold. And also I've been with some people that also they climbed before Denali, for example, and they feel like Aconcagua, it was colder than Denali. Always depend of the weather. You know, it's a big mountain and the weather can change a lot in minutes, you know, like super fast. You can have many different things in the environment. Then hand layers, yes, we need mittens for summit day, yes or yes. Face protection like goggles, it's super important. But also it's important to tell you guys that the first section of the mountain is pretty hot. That means that it's gonna be sunny, super sunny, at least until base camp. It's gonna be sunny, so you have like, it's a desert, so sometimes during the day it's extremely hot and during the night it's extremely cold.
What's on the screen right now, we have the Mountain Hardwear Absolute Zero Parka, and we have the Jubilee goggles there. Oh man, those gloves, I think. Yeah, the OR Alt Event. And then we have the Scarpa Phantom boots, and then of course just hand and toe warmers.
Just one thing about the triple boots, but because it's a very common question. For example, you will see the guides that we like to go with triple boots. I like to go with triple boots always. Also, just in case, okay? Because we are talking about success, but also we are talking about to be safe in the mountain. So this is an item that gonna make you safer if something happened. And I am not talking about our team or somebody of our team. If somebody happened with somebody else, up on the mountain, and we need to do something or to help to some another expedition, to some another person, we're gonna do it. And maybe sometimes summit day gonna be quite longer. That means that if we have triple boots, we can avoid any frostbite or any problem in your toes.
Yeah. Folks,
Yeah.
those toes are important. Mike, go ahead.
Just real quick, I think everything that Nani's saying is great. When I started using triple boots on Aconcagua, it kind of revolutionized things for me. I was trying to use double boots and put these super gaiters on, and my feet were always cold. And I started using triple boots, and I didn't have any problems. And I'm someone that has really good circulation. I generally don't have cold feet on summit day on Everest or skiing to the South Pole or Vincent, whatever it is. But I found that just that lack of oxygen on Aconcagua made it really cold, starting early in the morning. So safety, very important if it takes you some extra time, if there's a rescue or something on summit day, but also just so you're comfortable. I think it's really important to invest in the triple boots if you can.
Awesome. And Mike, while I have your triple boot attention, where on the mountain you might wear just running shoes or trekkers for a little while, where on the mountain do you actually make the switch to triple boots so they kind of know how long they're going to be in those boots?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, the 360 route, it's really logistically heavy, and the guides will all get into the nuance of those logistics, at the team meetings in town. Every guide has a different strategy there. But what I used to do is I'd trek into base camp with kind of a light hiker with some ankle support. And then I might use that light hiker up to camp 1 or camp 2, depending on where the snow line was that year. Or sometimes I put the triple boots on even from base camp. Really depends on the year and the amount of snow and how cold it is. But you can often get away with the light hikers with some ankle support to camp 1 or camp 2, and then put your triple boots in your porter load or carry those up on one of those double carries. So each guide has a slightly different strategy there. And your specific guide will talk more about that with you in Mendoza at the team briefing.
If I can add something to that, it's very good to talk a little bit about that, because speaking about the terrain, it's a very rocky terrain. It's loose scree. If you don't have snow, it's scree. So it's like much better to have, if you are not using like double or triple boots, to use like approach boots, like lighters, but better than sneakers, because the terrain is like very loose rocks in some places.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, a couple more gear questions, guys. Mike or Nani, feel free to jump in, either of you. A summit suit. Everyone in this picture is not wearing a summit suit, versus layering. Especially, again, we're thinking about smaller women that might get really like a little marshmallow in all of their layers, which I'm sure you've seen before. Pros and cons on summit suit. Do you even need that? And layering different layers. What would you recommend?
I could take this one just to add a little kind of global context there, because it's a question we get for Vincent quite a bit as well. And then, of course, in the Himalayas, the one-piece summit suits are very, they're great for the Himalayas, but not so much for Aconcagua or Vincent. You want to have that flexibility of having the top and the bottom. So maybe you get into camp and you put on the bottoms, but throughout the day, you will put on the top-down parka at the rest breaks, but then be able to take that off. If you have a one-piece suit, then you're kind of committed to that. And if the temperature changes, if you go from behind a cliff band where you're in the shade into the sun, then you start overheating, and it's really hard to take that off. So having that flexibility is really important. So absolutely don't go with a one-piece summit suit. You want to have the top and bottom parka and pants so that you have that flexibility.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we had one more question about backpacks on our gear list. We do ask everyone to bring 2 backpacks as well as 2 duffels. We've kind of described how the duffels move up the mountain. You need 2 of them. But we also ask for a day pack, 35 to 40 liter. And then we also ask for that big expedition pack, 85 to 100 plus liters. Why 2 backpacks? How does that work on the mountain? We only have one back.
It's like this. To get base camp, we're gonna give to the mules our duffel. That means that day by day, we're gonna use a small backpack because we're not gonna be carrying, because the mules, they manage their own timing. They're gonna get the different intermediate camping sites with all our gear, and we don't need to carry nothing because the mule's gonna be doing that work. Then up on the mountain from base camp to the high camps, yes, we're gonna the personal gear, starting from there, from the personal gear, it's a little bit more comparing with the gear that we're gonna be using during the trekking to get base camp. That's why we need these two backpacks. But yeah, we recommend two backpacks. One big one, 80 to 100 liters, and one small from 30, 35, 40, 45, something like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's useful to have the two different packs for that reason.
Perfect. Awesome. So I want to move on. There's been a number of questions again about like kind of the price, the options, things like that. So this is a quick overview again of our upcoming climb, our number of days when we're going to be hiking, trekking, and our price. I know we've had questions about speed ascents, shortening this. So Mike, give us the rundown of how our speed ascents with Hypoxico work and what that looks like for climbers.
Hypoxico is another term that people should know if you're considering the speed ascent option. Essentially, that's a private tent that goes over your bed that allows you to sleep at altitude. It kind of reduces the oxygen in that environment. So you can kind of pre-acclimatize at home to get your body used to altitude before starting the trip. So that allows you to expedite the expedition a little bit. So that's the Hypoxico home tent, and that's what we use for our speed ascent. So you have separate logistics. You show up a little bit later, you heli into base camp, and then you join our regular team there. We offer a lot of private trips. People will do the speed ascent on private trips as well, so that they can kind of control their own itinerary and pacing. But yeah, speed ascent is a great option if you're short on time. Seems like a lot of people, certainly in the Himalayas these days, can't get away for 2 months. So if time away is difficult for you, then speed ascent is certainly a good option to consider.
Awesome. Quick question on Hypoxico, Mike. Would somebody want to use a Hypoxico system if they're just doing a regular 20-21 day trek, or does that feel a little overkill? Can that still help somebody like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad they asked it, because a lot of times people think, hey, it can't hurt to use the Hypoxico system. It can only make me more prepared. And that's actually not the case. If you're planning on doing the regular trip, the regular itinerary allows your body plenty of time to acclimatize. And if you combine that with the Hypoxico tent at home, the tent doesn't allow your body to sleep quite as soundly and recover quite as well. So you can't train quite as hard, quite as effectively. So if you're going to do the regular trip, whether it's on Everest or Aconcagua, you do not want to use the Hypoxico home pre-acclimatization tent. Just avoid it. Only use it if you're planning on expediting your expedition and shortening the itinerary.
Awesome. Yeah. And then folks, once again, we had that really awesome acclimatization webinar. I just want to share that once again with you all. I think it's really helpful. You really get to hear it from the folks that work at these companies, their successes, their stories, how to use it, and kind of just their philosophy around it, which I think is really impactful. And then the last question on this page, Mike, that I love to chat about is the helicopter exit and how that works. That is something we offer from the second, of course, you have to summit and then go to the second base camp. How does that work, and can that be integrated into a team climb as well?
Absolutely. I think helicopter technology gets better. These A-Star Airbus helicopters are so incredible. They can fly at high altitude. They use them on Denali, Aconcagua, in the Himalayas very commonly these days. So we're seeing the use of helicopters really skyrocket. One place we see them on Aconcagua is either if you're doing the speed ascent on the way in, or just to avoid that 18-mile trek on the way out at the end of your Aconcagua expedition. And absolutely, that's something that you can often purchase after your climb. When you get back down to base camp, you can just tell your guide, hey, I'm considering the helicopter option, and usually they can organize that for you But certainly, if you know that's something you're going to want to do, it's kind of like the porters. Pre-booking that allows us to make sure that's in place for you, because you could get to base camp and the helicopters aren't running that day, or they're totally busy, or they can't get you out until the weather turns bad. So pre-booking that is always a good idea. But yeah, it's something that's becoming a lot more common on Aconcagua as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So folks, we want to do a really quick recap of a lot of these options. We have been just kind of like saying, well, you can add this on, you could do this, you could do this. So here is a really quick overview of a lot of those options. I know Mike was just going through them. I'm going to go over a couple of the simple ones and then have him jump back in. So single rooming is something that we can add on if you want a room by yourself in Mendoza. And then we can always do a private climb. That's kind of in the middle right there. We talked about porter support. Nani, one question came in about porter support. And maybe, Mike, this is a question for you.
Yeah.
We charge about $1,700 for porter support, and that is just support for the way up. That does not include the way down. Is that what I am reading correctly, Mike?
No, it does include the way down as well. So essentially, it's one porter load per move. So it would be base camp to camp 1, 20 kilos. Camp 1 to camp 2, 20 kilos. Camp 2 to camp 3, 20 kilos. And then high camp down to Plaza de Mules on the other side, 20 kilos as well. So the descent is included in that price.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for that. And so, Nani, tell us a little bit more about oxygen add-ons. That's something we didn't talk about, but I know you mentioned, and we added this on because you said more and more people are using oxygen in the upper mountain. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. For those people that, for example, had some problem to get acclimatized, or who had some altitude issue, some altitude sickness before in some another mountain that is very common, we have the option to get some oxygen for the summit day. That means that we're going to do a properly acclimatization process day by day, like always in the same schedule. But for summit day, we can add oxygen. That is something that anyways you can decide before to pre-book, you can do it before to go, or we can do it up on the mountain. If we realize, of course, this decision we're going to take with you guys or with the client, but if you want that option, we have the possibility to give you. But of course, again, you have to have some cash with you. You can talk about prices with CTSS later, or because honestly, I don't know, I don't have that information right now. But it's a possibility. And also for those people who had that problems, it's going to be safer, 100%.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So folks, if you're interested in oxygen, that's something what we're just starting to do. Also, it's not even on our website yet. It's kind of first to know, first to hear. Just reach out to us and we'll help get that set up for you and work through all that. Other options, we just talked about the helicopter exit and the speed ascent. I'm going to turn this back over to Mike just to talk about our Polish Glacier Traverse, a different route we run, our options to do private climbs. And then you see Mike's mentioned a few times Vinson, and there is a Vinson dovetail kind of connection that you can work with. So Mike, can you talk through those last 3 options for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Polish Glacier, I think, is a good one for people to know about. You're climbing this kind of steeper glacier from high camp, essentially all the way to the summit, and you end up doing a loop on summit day, going up the Polish Glacier route and then down the normal route. And, if you're a really strong climber and you're confident at altitude, you've climbed maybe in Ecuador and Bolivia, Peru, wherever else, or the Himalayas, and you feel confident with your technical ability and your ability at altitude, the Polish Glacier is a great option to consider. Where we see it most often is our clientele training for Everest. So people that have either climbed Aconcagua in the past, they'll come back, climb the Polish with us in lead up to Everest, a couple months later in the spring, because they want to train at high altitude again and get that time on steep, technical, icy, glaciated terrain. So that's where we see it the most, but it's great. Even if you're not training for Everest or another 8,000 meter peak, it's a great option to consider if you're just a really solid climber that wants to challenge yourself. They tend to fix lines on the Polish Glacier now, so it's quite safe you just clip into the fixed line, kind of Himalayan style, and ascend. So it's not like you're free climbing it and at risk of taking a big lead fall or something like that. You're clipped into safety ropes all the way to the top. Vincent dovetail, another thing that we've been seeing much more often is when people are in South America, maybe they're coming from Europe or Asia or North America, they want to kill two birds with one stone. If they're on the Seven Summits track, they want to climb Vincent and then follow it up with Aconcagua since it's relatively close, or vice versa. So we're seeing a lot of people combine back-to-back Aconcagua and Vincent, or Vincent and Aconcagua, just to let people know that is an option if that's something they want to do. And certainly, with Vincent as well, a lot of people are dovetailing the last degree ski to the South Pole and Vincent. So we'll get people that do the South Pole ski, Vincent, Aconcagua, and that's all something we've got the logistics fairly dialed in for. So if that's something you're interested in, we can make that happen for you.
Awesome. Folks, you can really go a lot of places once you make your way to South America. That really does put Antarctica on the map. Mike, you said one thing that caught my attention. You mentioned obviously on the Polish Glacier Traverse, they're going to be roped up. That makes absolute sense. Do you ever rope up teams on the regular or the 360, the normal summit route that people do if they're doing the normal route or the 360? Yeah. Do teams rope up on that?
Yeah, sometimes we do. It's all condition dependent. Sometimes it can be pretty snowy and icy in the Canaleta, and it's steep enough that someone could take a fall there. So we might rope up in that situation. Or you're coming down from the summit and people have had a long day and maybe their legs are a little bit rubbery. So to protect from a fall, a guide might, short rope a client to protect them from taking a fall and going for a little slide. So yes, we do rope teams up sometimes, or individuals up sometimes on the regular route.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Mike, I want to ask you one more while I have your attention about the summit day, because it's just a good time to ask it, I think. A couple people were wondering, and I know this is probably condition and guide dependent, made in the moment, a decision made in the moment. What time are guides often pushing out of that camp 3, that high camp, for the summit in the morning or the night before? They kind of anticipated approximate leave time.
Nani, what time do you typically leave on your expeditions?
Between 5 and 6 a.m.
Okay. I'm the same, around the same time, 5 to 6 a.m. If we know it's going to be worse weather or we're dealing with new snow, we might leave a little bit earlier, but typically we want to get that sun. It's actually a perfect photo right behind your head there, Stephanie. That's right when the sun hits us on Aconcagua. We want that sun to be hitting us around 7 a.m. If you don't get that sun, if you start too early, then that's a very cold stretch of summit day. So being able to leave late enough so that the sun hits us there can make the difference between, people struggling to stay warm or getting frostnip or something like that. So I think, 5 to 6 a.m. leave time is pretty normal, pretty average.
And then one option we haven't talked about that is not on this list, we don't have an option to rent any gear from us. Mike, we don't traditionally offer gear rentals for our expeditions, but Nani, you might also obviously have a great answer to this. Are there places to rent gear locally in Mendoza if you don't want to travel with everything? You don't quite have everything pieced together for this trip yet.
Yes, we have. We have a couple places, and normally in this first meeting that we're going to have in Mendoza, then we keep going with the gear check. And in that point, if somebody needs to buy something or to rent something, you can do it there in Mendoza, wherever you want. You can rent whatever you want, double boots, sleeping bags, parkas, and like that. But speaking about it, this is a good question. In my point of view, if you can get your own boots, it's much better because it's gonna be more comfortable. It's common like the people start with something new with good qualities, good brands, and like that, and then the people get blisters or like that because it's not your boot. But anyways, if the people want to do it, it's 100% possible to do it in Mendoza.
Awesome. Perfect. So folks, we also include resources in our pre-trip once you're signed up about some of our recommended local vendors or where you can rent and hire that gear locally. Doing it in advance is always a good idea. Climbing season hits like a fury down there and things are busy. And so you want to make sure if you want to rent something, you have access to it ahead of time. Mike, have you ever rented anything in Mendoza specifically?
I haven't personally, but I know options are much better now than they were 20 years ago. So, as Nani says, pretty much anything you need you can find nowadays. That was not the case 2 decades ago.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, folks, we are on basically our last slide here. I know there are a couple of lingering questions, and I want to ask this as we wrap up. So, Mike, we've been mentioning and I gave a little teaser of our marginal gains philosophy earlier and just our overarching philosophy as a company and on Aconcagua. But I'm going to let you go ahead and talk a little bit about CTSS as a company and how we approach Aconcagua.
Yeah, I think our philosophy and approach to Aconcagua is the same as most of our other expeditions, Everest, Vinson, whatever it might be. We take a marginal gains approach. At the end of every season, we really look critically at every aspect of our program and try and make it better, hoping that, 1% better here, 1% better there will all add up to much higher success and a better experience. Nani has kind of been helping us run that Aconcagua program from Mendoza. Nani and I discussed in depth last year what we can do to improve the program for this coming season. Part of that was Nani's suggestion of adding that extra rest day. So we're really looking critically at this program every year to make sure we're offering kind of the best aspects throughout the expedition. So that's a little bit on our marginal gains philosophy. And part of that, is expert leadership, whether it's guides from the United States or, Nani is one of the experts on Aconcagua. He knows that mountain like almost no one else. So having his local knowledge and experience and international knowledge, as we mentioned, Nani guides all over the world for us. He's an Everest summiter. He'll be coming back to Everest with us in the spring. So just kind of a narrow-minded Argentinian guide. He really has kind of that international experience, which we like all of our Aconcagua guides to have. So investing in that leadership is really important to us. That helps us maintain a higher success rate. I talked about it a little bit earlier. Our clientele are not just with us for Aconcagua. They're with us, Aconcagua, Denali, onto Everest. Maybe they climb Vinson with us or Kilimanjaro. And so we're invested in that success beyond Aconcagua. And as I mentioned, some of the local companies on Aconcagua, the Argentinian companies, maybe they only guide Aconcagua. So they're less invested in that success and the relationship. And I think that's one thing we do well. If you climb with Nani on Aconcagua, you're going to see him on Everest or, Denali, wherever it might be. So I think that relationship really kind of adds a lot. The slow acclimatization schedule, I won't beat that one to death. We've talked about that quite a bit, but that really helps us be successful. There are a lot of people that could summit Aconcagua that don't because their companies are rushing them up and rushing them down. We see the same thing on Everest Base Camp trek. People are not willing to invest the time into making sure people are well acclimatized and successful. And that's not us. That's not our MO. So having those contingency days for extra summit days or weather, whatever it might be, that's an important part of kind of that lengthy acclimatization schedule.
Yeah. Nani, I want to tap into you. You've seen a ton of operators on the mountain. You were the head of porters for a long time. You were a porter. You were a cook. You've been trekking with us for a while too. How, in your mind, as an Argentinian and as somebody that's just been around for a very long time on the mountain, how does CTSS set itself apart from those different operators? What have you noticed that we do?
Look, honestly, it's a good question. I am very happy with CTSS, and if not because we are talking with the company, I worked with different people, and I like that CTSS is a very serious company, trying to give to the people the whole information, trying to give you a process. It's super common to see some other companies sending people with no experience, without the experience, sending people straight to Aconcagua. And yes, of course, the people have a bad experience there because they don't have any experience previous. I like a lot that. And also, we have a very good relationship with you, with Mike, with Caroline, and we can talk. And also as a company, we like to talk with the people, with the clients. We are not like we believe like in not a pyramid, something like a leadership more horizontal, more 180 degrees, like everybody can talk and we can take decisions together, and we like to show all the map to everybody and keep going together.
Yeah, we do really want you guys to have a great experience. We want you to have all the tools and resources that you need to be successful. We want you to have access, whether you need help finding a coach, a nutrition coach, a physical training coach, whether you just want to talk through the route with our program manager staff, make sure you understand the gear and all that. We're going to really make sure you have all the help. We're going to give you our contact information and even a link to schedule a meeting with Mike and or Caroline. Caroline's the other co-owner with Mike. So you can actually schedule a quick call with them to review some of the things you've done, what's next for you. So before I close up and show the contact information, I do want to give the floor back over to Mike and Nani. Just final tips, final thoughts for climbers as we close out this nice, very long webinar, but I think it was really helpful with lots of great info. Nani, I'm going to give it to you first. What kind of thoughts and tips would you like climbers to walk away with today?
Bien. Something very simple, but at the same time a little bit complex, depending on your mind, It's to live day by day. In this kind of big expedition, it's super important to take day by day and to have a positive mindset, like whatever happened, you have to trust that everything gonna be okay. It's super common to see the people in the first day of the expedition or the second day thinking about summit day. No, it's day by day. And the other philosophy is to think that every single day is the most important day. So you have to take care of you, speaking about self-care, and that makes a very good process.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then Mike, I'd love to hear from you. What would you like people to leave with today, or what little tips and tricks?
Yeah, unfortunately, my tips are not quite as grandiose and philosophical as Nani's, unfortunately, but just simple things like bringing extra buffs. Like you look at that summit photo right there, everyone's wearing a buff. Aconcagua can be dusty, so being able to throw that buff over your mouth to keep the dust out, but also warm and humidify the air that you're breathing, so you're not straining your lungs quite as much. It's a simple thing you can do to really aid your success. That's really important. And, I don't mean to keep harping on the vino, on the wine, but Mendoza is really a world-class wine region, some beautiful wineries around there. It's a great place to explore, just hang out in town for a little bit. So I really recommend booking a couple extra days on the tail end of your expedition, hang out in town and enjoy the culture there. Go do some wine tours, experience what Argentinian culture has to offer. It's really an amazing place. If you've never been there before, go explore, maybe go down to BA, maybe drop down to Bariloche. It's really cool. So, enjoy it. It's more than just a climb. It's really an experience. Go hang out with Nani and Bariloche.
I love it. I think your tips and tricks really balance each other out well. You captured just the essence of being on a big mountain expedition with Nani, really staying in the moments, focusing on the journey. And then, of course, it's all the little things that we're going to help bring you along. Be like, you need 4 buffs, by the way. So we're going to make sure you don't miss on those little pieces and the culture and the stories that are part of Argentina. That's important to us, too. So
yep.
That really hits home. Well, here is all this great information. Of course, if you don't already follow us on Instagram or Facebook, please go out there and find it. Mike is posting on there, and it's really awesome to see his take on what's happening out there with all of our climbers, expeditions, and teams. That is our website, so go ahead and find us there. If once you get to Aconcagua, if you click the little orange button, you can submit an inquiry just to start the process of learning more about what we do. And then, of course, there's our email. You can just email us direct if you don't want to submit that inquiry. But if you want to chat with our team and really get some advice, I know there were a number of questions about like, I've done this peak, I've done this climb, what's next for me? That Calendly link is where you want to ask those really specific questions about your journey, your path, because Mike and Caroline will make a custom plan and help you decide on what's the next best step. It's not a general plan, it's a plan for you based on your budget, your time, your energy, and what your goals are. So use that Calendly link there. And also, so Mike is the author of Climbing the Seven Summits, a comprehensive guide. I have a copy of it, and it is a fantastic book. Mike and Nani, anything else to add? Any other thoughts before we sign off?
Just for me, thanks to Nani for joining us. I mean, he really is the expert on Aconcagua. So having his local knowledge here with us is hugely helpful. So thanks, Nani.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you guys. From my side, it was a pleasure to share with you. And I like to say to everybody, welcome to the CTSS family.
Woo-hoo. I love that. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up here. Nani, thank you again for being here. Mike, thank you for being here and having such an incredible company and being so welcoming to everyone that is here today. Folks, if you have follow-up questions, email us, drop us an inquiry. We are here to answer those questions. All right, folks, wherever you are, enjoy your afternoons or evenings. Thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.